Hey, what's up, everyone? DREAGEN here to tell you that you should be watching When Animals Dream. So When Animals Dream is a 2014 Danish film that basically follows a young girl named Sonia in this kind of small fishing community town in Denmark, and basically is a story of kind of like, you can tell there's something off. You can tell there's something not quite right. Everything seems seemingly normal and mundane. It's a, like I said, small village, small community. These are people who've grown up together, people who have known each other their whole lives, basically said hello, good morning, good evening to each other since, time immemorial. So what's up? What's going on? What's wrong here? Well, you spend time with Sonia and you start to realize that she's not quite what she seems. Not really, but you're not quite sure why. Her father seems like a pretty, put together guy, but he spends most of his time taking care of his wife, who for the most part seems, I don't want to say catatonic, because she's very much aware, but she's bound to a wheelchair. She doesn't speak, so it's kind of implied that maybe she's a mute. And that basically she needs round-the-clock care. So between, him and his daughter, they basically kind of take care of her. But it's not very clear what's wrong with her. And more interestingly, the town, the people, they all seem very kind of on guard around here. They don't seem to like her. They don't really treat her like a sick woman or a disabled person. There's not a lot of pity, not a lot of sympathy or remorse being kind of thrown her way. It's quite the opposite. It's very kind of like, everyone almost seems to kind of shun her. And by and large, there's a little bit of that kind of directed towards her daughter, Sonia. Again, in the beginning, it's pretty subtle, nothing too major, but just enough for you, the audience, be able to kind of pick up on, basically, for lack of a better way of putting it, some bad vibes. Vibes which very much move to the forefront of the story as the film progresses. And as the film progresses, you start to notice that Sonia starts undergoing some changes. A lot of it first is psychological. She's having these dreams, which you don't really understand what they mean, nor does she. And these dreams begin to persist. They begin to manifest themselves in ways that affect her outward behavior. And when this starts to happen, that is when the people around her, the same people who kind of treat her mother almost a bit like a leper, start to really change the way they look at her. And it implies that they know more about what's going on with her than even she does, which relates to the whole notion of that there's a secret here. A secret that maybe isn't so secret to everyone except Sonia. And she starts to get suspicious. She starts to get curious. And she starts to get kind of uneasy because now that she realizes there's more to her mother's condition than she's been led to believe. That there's something else, afoot here. And as a result, the townspeople start really treating her poorly. They start really acting more aggressively towards her. And that is when you notice that Sonia starts undergoing more changes. Now, less psychological, more physical. And that's when you start to realize this story, as the name implies, When Animals Dream, is less metaphorical and perhaps more literal. That Sonia isn't quite what she seems. And by what she seems, I mean human. You start to pick up on hints of lycanthropy in the film. And for those of you who don't know what lycanthropy is, it is a condition in which, a human being can physically transform or shapeshift to some degree into another animal. So the one you're probably all most familiar with is werewolves. Sometimes you'll hear werewolves referred to as lycanthropes. But lycanthropes can basically be any human that turns into any kind of were animal, basically. Now, I will say this film has a very modest budget. So if you hear the word lycanthrope, and you feel like you're going to see something like Underworld, where it's going to be someone who turns into a big CGI monster or a full practical suit, don't hold your breath. We're talking basic brow prosthetics and some well-placed hair and some, good use of contact lenses. But with that said, the scenes in which you see that are used sparingly and very effectively, and it creates a very haunting feel, basically treating Sonia as a predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Who begins to manifest these traits and these behaviors because of the way she's being treated. And that's basically what this whole film is about. It's that human beings are the architects of their own destruction. They bring about that which they're trying to avoid through the actions in which they employ to avoid it. In other words, if they had only welcomed her, if they'd only accepted her, if they had only actually treated her like they were her neighbors, this primal side, this aggression might have never manifested itself. So essentially, this is a story of basically knowing how to treat thy neighbor. Not shunning someone for their differences, but welcoming them for it. But as with human beings, it's a very clannish species. Humans don't like things that are different from themselves. You could argue that this feeds into kind of the primal undertone of this film of that, of wolf in sheep's clothing, a predator. They are the flock, they are the herd, and they sense a predator. They sense something in their midst that could be dangerous to them, and therefore they want to ostracize it. They want to exorcise it from their collective. But again, it is that act, it is that action that drives her to kind of do what she does ultimately in the end. I won't spoil it for you, as with always these recommendation videos. I don't like to give away the ending because I want you guys to go out and watch them. But I don't think you'll be shocked about how things go down towards the end of the film. Let's just say that. But now, like I said, this is a Dutch film, so it's not in English. There are subtitles. And as always, I know for some people that subtitles can kind of be a deal breaker. And I always say, just because a film has subtitles, give it a chance. I think if you really just sit down and watch a film that's not in English, you'll get over the fact that you're reading pretty quickly. I mean, if you're on your phone and you're looking at like your news feed, your YouTube feed, your Facebook feed, you're reading a lot of stuff and without even realizing it. And that's more, that's more words to read than watching subtitles on a screen. So I think you'll quickly just get used to that and not even realize you're doing it. With that said, in terms of subtitles, this is probably a good film maybe to get started with if you're not used to reading subtitles, because this is not a dialogue-heavy film. There are large chunks of this film that are silent, where it's just kind of characters moving about a scene, kind of doing their own thing. They're not really, gabbing the whole time. So the subtitles are kind of used sparingly because, well, dialogue is used sparingly in this film. So for that reason alone, if in terms of getting into a subtitled movie, this is probably a good one to start with, because like I said, you're not going to be doing a lot of reading. There were even points where I wasn't sure when I first watched the movie, where I was like, okay, is this the dub maybe I've accidentally gotten, or is this the sub? Because I always try to look for the subtitle version of any kind of foreign film, and I wasn't sure for a little bit because there was no dialogue. So it took me a minute to find out, like, okay, good, this is the the original language version of the film. So with that said, it's subtitled, yes, but don't let that stop you. Give it a shot. It's a really, really interesting film. I recommended Under the Skin previously on the show, and if you liked that film, I think you'll really enjoy this film. Excuse me. It's very much kind of in that vein. A lot of subtlety, very, very heavy on atmosphere. This film has a lot of mood to it. So if you liked Under the Skin for that reason, you'll really enjoy this film too. It's in that kind of vein. But it's not a retelling of that either. It is its own story. It is its own film, and it deals with very different themes. But again, that's what some of these smaller, kind of more atmospheric films tend to do. They rely heavily on themes, and they kind of put forth themes and idea that maybe we don't really consciously think about or question, and it kind of puts it in the forefront and really makes us think about ourselves more. Like, how would we react to this? How would we deal with this? It's very easy to root for Sonia when you watch this movie, but if this was happening in real life and you were a member of this community, would you be on her side, or would you be like the townsfolk, wanting to run her out of town with, flaming torches and pitchforks? It's very easy to say no, but when you're actually put in that situation, when you're confronted with that reality, would you really be able to just separate yourself from the masses? Would you really be able to ignore that kind of instinctive fear within yourself, that kind of knee-jerk reaction that is ingrained in you through millions of years of evolution? Would you be able to just ignore that and accept her for being different, especially if you were to kind of get a good look at her towards the end of the film and you kind of see a little bit more of what's going on there, when more of the inside becomes outside, if you will. But again, these are the kinds of questions this film and films like it ask its audience. That's one of the reasons why I like these movies a lot, and why I recommend them here, because again, I think they deserve more attention than they've been given, and I think they can really push you as a storyteller, push you as someone who just likes to, utilize their imagination, and really just, make you question the kind of things that you probably don't really question on a day-to-day basis. So with that said, I recommend When Animals Dream. It's a really, really interesting film, a a very well made film considering it had such a small budget. The way it's shot, the way everything's kind of framed, they utilize what they have very, very effectively. And the cast is great, the direction is great. So if you haven't already seen it, please check it out. And come back, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think, as I'll put some links in the description section where you can pick it up so you can check it out for yourself. And thanks for tuning in, guys, and keep checking in with this show. We're going to have plenty more of good, smaller film recommendations, but I'll have some bigger ones on the horizon. But right now, I kind of like sticking with these smaller ones just to kind of get the word out, as it were. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!